Dolores Mallea, architect and founder of Sur del Cruz, a Buenos Aires-based studio and workshop that explore architecture, design, art, and material research. Dolores' practice is rooted in wood experimentation and continuously refining craftsmanship. Sur del Cruz also consults for the Inter-American Development Bank on wooden housing projects, collaborating with architect Joaquín Lavelli. Over the past decade, Dolores has built a studio that grows and adapts with every team member contribution. Please welcome Dolores Mallea.
Hi everyone. It's Dolores Mallea. It's
Perdón,
no.
perdón, perdón, Mallea, sorry.
Hi everyone. I'm Loli. I run this small practice called Sur del Cruz, and I'm based in Buenos Aires, like Jime said. I'm very honored to be sharing this space with all these creative souls, and especially with Andrea and Claudia, who I admire a lot. So I made a presentation after talking to Jime these past few weeks. It made me think about the practice in 2 weeks all at once at these very special times that we're living. And it was a good exercise for me to redefine what we've been doing at the studio for the past 15 years. I'm gonna share this trip. So what, 1 minute. Does that work? Is it working? Good. So the studio is called Sur del Cruz, and it stands sort of like Southern Cross. Of course, I was always very aware of this Southern identity, although I now think it can be expanded, and I don't know. It's very interesting to define ourselves as the South, if we're still a South as a whole, or how the South is working in this context. I'm based in Chacarita, center of the capital, which is the center of the country. I put the map of our country for reference, and the blue dot is where we are, which is Buenos Aires. And this country is, like we said, very big, very long, and we have so many countries within one country. And to the question whether there is an identity, an Argentinian identity, I think there are two things that can be addressed. First, there's something that we usually hear, that we're a new country, which I absolutely disagree. We're by no means a new country. We have a new limits, and that is about 200 years old. But we're a country with many nations, and it takes a long time and maybe a lot of time, many kilometers and a lot of time to know all these nations within one country. So we're new and we're old at the same time. And that has been present in my practice all this time. To the right, you will see a few of the pieces we make, but I'm gonna start a bit at the beginning. Let me see. When I left architect school, I didn't quite fit the ideal of an architect within a studio. Like back then, I went through public school, so I owe my degree to my country, which is an amazing gift, given that you start your career without a debt, and that has immense impact on one's practice. So I left to the university, and I didn't really fit in the architect studio type of profession. And it took me some time to figure that out. So I went to set designing and art school and tried a few different things. And I finally figured out that I liked wood. But by then, I couldn't really find where to learn the craft. This was this had to do with the consequence of the 90s and the void of craftsmanship within our country due to imports and I don't know what had happened with technical school. So I didn't find much. I went to the States and I learned as an intern there for a bit, and instantly came back and started really looking for wood shops. And I worked for a couple of years with traditional woodworkers, completely out of the design sphere or the art scope. And that was quite liberating to learn the craft. I then found the studio that's called A77, which is among the most interesting practices, in my opinion, of architects that built. And I helped them build a project at MoMA PS1, and that was kind of liberating for me because I saw this architect that knew how to build, which was something that I hadn't figured out. How is it possible that we as architects cannot build? By that time, I figured out 3 things that helped me a lot, which was one, the wood shop is the space I want to spend time. I wanted to work with my hands and I wanted to use tools. So that gave me the space and the scale, which was at the beginning furniture. Now at that time, like we said, Argentina is quite has its ups and downs. And at the beginning, I thought that was a terrible thing, but then it's just a description. And I also think that somehow, unfortunately, the world is going towards instability in many things, in many ways. So I think we developed a survival instinct and that has followed us through our practice. The first thing I figured out when I started making furniture was that craft and capitalism has a problem with scale and time, and this is obvious. So I had to figure it out how to use our time in the best way to make a business out of this. And then the other thing was the scale. So I couldn't make a business out of just my 2 hands. So I had to transfer knowledge to others. And that's when the idea of starting a team happened. And the thing is, it helps to say we do, we think, we make, as opposed to I do, I think, I make, because it's like so much more interesting to have a team with us. So the picture to the right and the bottom, that's our first team. And this is the first studio that we opened. By that time, we had no brand, no identity, no clients, no tools, no money, nothing. But somehow we figured it out. 10 years ago, Argentina was having this outburst of work. So we just jumped on that wave and started making things. And the first years we used other people's projects to build up a business because we couldn't get grants or loans. So we figured that we had to establish a studio and make it a good space for others to work. We started having an influx of young students from my same university who were feeling the same lack of not being able to build. And these years were amazing, were the hardest, but best memories ever. After a few years, I started finding new projects to collaborate with. So I'm going to show a few of this and how these projects helped us figure out who we were and what we wanted to do. The first group we partnered up with was Ópera Periférica, which is an ensemble, an opera ensemble, Baroque opera ensemble that plays Baroque opera outside of the theater. So this gave us, I went back to set designing, and this was an amazing experience. The lamps you see on the top and the bottom, we had to design lamps, and we didn't have money for dimmering lights. So we came up with these boxes that have an elevator within, and you have a few straps, so the lights will go up and down. And we had like minimum resources, and this amazing thing happened. So throughout all the plays, all these lights would be activated by the actors and singers. And this became a way for us to be out of the shop. So we became very thorough on how to work within the shop and how to transfer knowledge, which is something that kind of obsesses me with craft, how you transfer knowledge through the hands. Of course, by that time, I had been reading a lot of Richard Sennett, a lot of Juhani Palahma, and I was working on those ideas. How you transfer to the younger generations. The other thing with that is that once you transfer that knowledge and you set up a way of working within the studio, everyone has a lot of freedom to keep on working on themselves. So that everyone's hands will be as good as yours or even better. And that was a great experience for me. So this project started taking us out from the studio. Then then there was lockdown. So we were stuck in the studio, and all these amazing creative thing happened because we were locked up in here. We had wood that I had been collecting forever. We had the tools, and our hands were trained enough to make the same piece with different hands without anyone noticing, which kind of reminds me of what Claudia and Andrei said before. How do you work collectively on a piece? In our case, my idea was to make enough pieces that all the hands were there present, but none was none was a reacher. I mean, none was imposing on the others. So that was a good training. The first picture you see on the left was I'm really proud of that because it's a piece we made during pandemic, which is brushes to touch other people in a caressing way because we were not allowed to touch and all that. And I applied for an artisan national prize, and it's the first time I got a mention. So the thing is, you can easily become an architect, you can easily become a designer, but you cannot easily become an artisan. That's like, to me, was always the highest aspiration I could ever have. So I was really proud of that we did that. Anyway, then the two following pictures are these tools made of pine and this little throne, that's American throne, made of eucalyptus. Both plants do not belong to the provinces they're grown. So that brought the idea of colonialism of plants, a colonialism through plants migration. So how plants are moved from one place to the other one through colonizing, throughout the colonizing period. And also that allows us to talk about migration, and in a very, while you're studying, you can make a piece. The thing is, because these three provinces of the northeast part of our country are heavily invested in forest, I was invited there and I went through the cloning of the trees. So we started doing all this research. I started reaching out to people, factories, and everyone along the production line. So I could really grasp how this affects the environment and human beings and societies and education and what is happening. So we started mapping up this, and I'm not an academic, of course, but it allowed me to make research so I can become a better designer. It's not that I can do extremely thorough research, but that keeps growing on the pieces. The next piece you see on the right, it's a plinth, and this is when we figured out that we were doing objects that give hierarchy to other objects. So this was a game. What things make other things important? And that was a different narrative we were working on. And that piece, I designed it after visiting the Jesuits missions, the ruins of the Jesuits missions up north in Misiones. Then the other pieces you see some are to exercise everyone's hands so that we can improve the craft, and they become pieces, and hopefully I can sell them so I can keep on doing more pieces and research. The funny thing is, the hardest thing for me was having a team, growing as a team, improving everyone's hands, and being able to pay salaries. In this economy of Argentina that goes up and down, and it was at some point kind of the ultimate challenge, because pieces are not hard to make. Beautiful pieces are not hard to make, but making a business out of this was my main concern, I guess. I'm sorry. This is another project that I admire a lot. Because of this recent immigration in Argentina, there's a lot of craft, like complete group of craftsmen moved from Europe to Argentina with marble, with stone, with metal. So this is a crystal factory in Santa Fe, in the middle of Santa Fe, which was a colony. So it's a heavily industrialized but craft industrial area. And my partner and I spent there, like maybe we were there 4 or 5 times. By the last time we were there, I ventured to make a mold, a wooden mold that I had seen in Sweden on a previous trip, how old molds were made with wood. So we designed that and we spent 3 weeks with them while understanding what was going on. Because the other thing is, it's very important to understand. So there comes a time for the designer or the maker to make silence and observe. And the thing is, there's so much knowledge and so many generations that there's no way a designer can acquire that knowledge of the making, but you can start this beautiful conversation with the craft people that are doing this and have been doing this for generations. The picture on the right, I think I'm with my arms are up because the piece finally came out and I loved it. And I was in complete awe. There's all these choreography going there and all this richness of the craft. These are the 5 pieces that we made because I couldn't make, or I didn't have enough budget to make 5 different molds. We figured out a way of, with one mold, using different pieces to make 5 different crystal. And this was, I don't know how to say it in English. It's called vitrina. So like where you keep something. And again, this was an object that gives meaning to another object. Whatever you put in there is relevant, just like an altar or the plinth or the throne. I don't know, just something. Okay, this is another project. And this is by the time I started figuring out that I needed institutions to carry some of the projects that we wanted to do. This is, there was a craft institution that asked me to come teach at a wood shop within a unit close to the city. So I think I spent 4 years coming back and forth every week, every other 2 weeks, depending on how things were going on in there. It's a very, it's a world on its own, I guess. Life happens in there, totally different from anything we would understand. But I was always interested in, we have a thing we say, we only talk about wood and we only talk about wood, and we can spend hours talking about that and thinking about how to build. So when I arrived there, the first thing I saw was the picture on the left, and they had done that for Kids Day, Children's Day. And I was in awe and told, oh, like, this is amazing. And so I spent the next 4 years teaching how to draw, which was kind of sort of abstract thinking and communicating ideas. And we spent a lot of hours discussing why a wood should go on one side or the next, what movements you can anticipate. And of course, this translates to something that happens in Argentina, which is the self-building of a lot of people self-build their homes. So all this knowledge was instantly transferred to that, how you put a column, where the wind is going to come, how the water is going to draw, like how you structure something. And that was my main concern, like let's talk about wood. And I only had a couple hours, so it's like, I have 2 hours, let's do this. And it was the most amazing experience, because in the end, I always wanted to have a colleagues chat rather than, I don't know, I had so much to learn. So it was like, yeah. By the second year, I figured out that there was something we could solve. There's this thing, the social groups within units are intentionally scattered so that they can avoid any problems from ahead. I don't know how to say that. So I used to have there was a lot of rotation, and there's no contact because people change their cell phones a lot, and I wasn't on a personal relationship. I don't belong to the institution. So I figured that we had to document what was happening, kind of in a ensomari sort of autoprogettazione that could work for others. And also that the kids, because these were kids actually, once they left the unit, they could have the documents of what they had done. And I always thought that documenting work, it's kind of like a script or a score. You can play it again whenever, and wherever they find themselves, they can always go back to that. So we did that, and they designed a whole line of furniture for a kids' residence. Kime, how are we doing on time?
Good. Good. I think that, yes, you started like a little bit like after your time, so it's good.
So this is what we did together, and it was kind of like the how to assemble it. Anyway, yeah, the names of that year's group is on the side. I lost track of everyone. I lost contact with anyone. So hope they're doing good. This is the project that happened a few years later because we had spent so much time in Entre Ríos, Corrientes, and Misiones, which are the Mediterranean provinces. And again, this is a long-term research, but it allowed me to understand how industry affects how the wood industry affects all these different spheres, like design, but construction and environment. We did this for the BID, International Development. Again, I think it calls for a lot of silence.
The Inter-American Development Bank. That's
American Development Bank. We connected with a lot of institutions, and we again furthered the research on all the actors within this, from the cloning to the shipping boat to China. And so that opened up our minds for future reference. Of course, I have more projects that I get to make, but this was it was good for me to do research without selling anything. It was the first time I was not selling a product or service, so good. These are two residencies that I did. The one on the left, I got invited last year as an architect in residence to Campo Garzón, and the theme was going back to rural life, and this is something that opens up a new chapter, and how I will define myself as Western I'm a Western mind, or we inherited the Western thinking. I don't know if that's the accurate term, but how because sometimes I have
okay.
yeah.
Western.
Sometimes I think that's what's happening, is like the way we're living is kind of a sinking ship. So we're like struggling to find ideas of how to survive that were there and that other people always knew. But somehow, in our experience of America, colonization just covered it. So the residency was like how to go back to rural life. Now, there's this approach of going back to rural life through the private compounds and having a fake rural life, or going back to real life in the interior part of the country, and how you process that. And I started thinking, well, if we steal that idea and process it with our minds, then we're not doing anything good, because we're not understanding the use of time, the use of environment, or the use of providing for oneself. This led me to a lot of conversations within my mind with Hannah Arendt. So I brought back that conversation of how we use time, and what is labor, what is work, how we use our time, and how we provide for ourselves. And this is like a month residency, so that's where it stays. And the other one is a Portugal residency that I did based on fibers again. The residency took place in an old factory that had been processing jute and sisal from the Portuguese territories, colonies, or depending on how they call them, and extracting fiber and producing rope and carpets back in the 30s, 50s, up to the 80s of last century in Portugal. And this was this amazing opportunity to study, because they had a museum and they had all the records of everything that had happened. So this was a non-research I did on my own. And again, I worked with fibers, and because I had found one in Argentina that's called Formio that had been introduced from New Zealand, but there was nothing left. So by the time I wanted to do research on what had happened, all these new neighborhoods had bulldozed the whole area. Anyway, These are the experiences of residencies. This is the biggest project I ever made, and this, I have to say, had to do with my ego. So by the time I was starting and we were making the pieces, the brushes, and the stools, I had to deal with something which is, I think it's important for everyone. I didn't want to be the girl that made little objects. And this project came in, and it took us 2 years to develop for an architect that had made a SketchUp, but we had to develop the whole construction of it. So everything you see there, we did in our studio. There was 4 of us, younger kids, the younger Sures and me. And we had to figure out how to build. And actually, the main challenge for me was because during these years, imports, I sold something and the imports were closed. The dollar skyrocketed twice, and my client asked for me to do this full cash. I hope nobody knows him, but it was the biggest challenge of my experience doing it in this way. And it was an amazing project because I was so worried with the technical part, so that everyone working at the studio, they had to like grow up and figure it out, and it came out amazing. It's still there after 2 years. But again, I think the ego, when you're a designer, artist, creative, is something that you have to come to terms with. I don't think it stays there forever, and it's something that you can go back to every time. But I think that, yeah, biggest thing I built, and now I can go back to making small things again. This is a project I got invited this year, and again, during Design Week Mexico, I was invited to work with an artisan in Izamal, which is Yucatan province. And they make this program that is called Vision and Tradition, which of course describes a lot of what's happening there. It's a project that has been going on for 11 years, so it was really well organized, and they flew me to Izamal, and I met with Gabriel, an amazing artisan, and we came up with a piece. Now, the thing is, this led me to thinking what happens with collaborations between designers and artisans, and how you make something together. And the first thing I figure is like, the work has to always have the 0 minute, like the 0 time together. So I was obsessed with the idea that we had to make something from scratch, that if I brought in my ideas, I was just manipulating the craft person. And if I was changing his work, I was interrupting his work. So I didn't want to do that. So we spent a whole week just talking and designing a piece together, which was completely, I didn't know what was going to happen, and it was amazing. We did a piece which is a bookcase with all of his work. So I said, let's use all your world, and we made this bookcase which encompasses like the living outside and all the dead inside. And the thing was, this was to be shown at the Anthropologic Museum in Mexico, which to me is like the biggest museum in America, absolutely the best. So both of us knew that, Gabriel and I, we knew it was the highlights of our careers, showing our work there. So we were very enthusiastic, and we worked for a whole week, and then we talked on the phone for another 2 months. And so I was doing all the budgeting to make sure we got the right price and all the texts. And this time I actually wanted, because he's Maya, we worked with linguists from Yucatan to have all the critic or the text of the work done in Maya, and then translated into Spanish, as opposed to having them in Spanish and then translated. So all the text of this, all the written text of this work was done by a Mayan linguist, which I found to be really interesting. Then this is the piece, and he said that the mestizos on top represent us both, because we're both mestizos, so yeah. And we did a lot of talking, and he's very articulate, and we kept making up the story, and like one would start and the other one would continue, and we talked for hours. Everyone was asking about the piece, and it was the first time he did furniture, and it was the first time I made figures. So yeah, this is okay, and this is the newest project, still on the works, and this is Santiago del Estero, and again, working with artisans, and all the time it takes all the silence I have to make until I understand a little of what's happening. I met with woodworkers. I had done some of this work in Corrientes, which is another province. And then this idea that we compare things and it's not possible. Like, yeah, I have so much to learn. So what's happening here, and this is what concerns me most, is like on the right, I have how we process information, and this is applied to science, and this is like 1730 something, the encyclopedia, and the system we process information. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Wait. I made. So if you see to the right, the way we process information as our Western world is we separate and divide. This is the human world, the mineral world, the animal, and then we subdivide again and we subdivide again until we can understand things as units. And I think that's the biggest problem we're facing now, that we think of ourselves as individuals and not as organisms. So our understanding is very poor at the moment, I guess, because the more we process information in this way, the less we can connect things and understand what's going on. So on the right, you will see quebracho blanco, and that's the vulgar term, which I don't know it's called vulgar, because it's not. And then the scientific name and the specific density. And that's how I process information, and that's how I understand wood. I buy these and I know all of these woods. I know how to work. I know what they smell. I can anticipate how they're going to work, but I do not understand them as organisms. So my view of this is very limited, and I don't know if I can have a lifetime maybe changing that. Whereas Rolando, who has been in that monte forever, his understanding of the wood, of the tree, is completely different. So the thing is, my question right now has to do with what is happening between these mixes of worlds and how, because everyone's looking at the South, if that South is a thing, because, well, Mexico had similar things and they're in the North. But what is happening, what are we doing as designers? If we're processing the final product, like the aesthetics of the South, we're not understanding where that comes from, and we're just looking at the end. So maybe that's my question right now, and I hope to work on that. Yeah, it's a long process. So anyway, I think that being from Argentina, what I've been doing lately is I have been designing Sur del Cruz more than the pieces, and that has given me a lot of tools to adapt. So anyone that's interested in how this works, it has to do more with designing the practice than, and then objects just come and they're the easy part. Anyway, I think that's it.
Dolores, this is an amazing presentation. You are a very smart cookie. The way you can tell your story, and you are really teaching. You are a born teacher, man. I mean, you need to teach. And you say that you're not an academic, but basically, by doing and learning and studying, you have become pretty much more than an academic. So I really admire your journey and your vision, the way you want to work with the artisans, the honesty of what you say, because you say also, this is my ego, and then you say, then I don't want to be anymore the ego. It's you're struggling with the facts, and you open up your mind to us. Thank you so much. Very impressed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dolores. And in a way, you are teaching every day at your space in Buenos Aires to a new generation and allowing for the craft to continue to live and to develop. And for you now, it's more like you're focusing the more like artistic practice and other type of project, which
Yeah.
right? Which is amazing. So I share on the chat the website. I know that we didn't have time to see the video, but there is an amazing video. You can see more like inside her studio, the way that she works, and well, it's incredible. So you can continue like exploring everything there.
I'm gonna upload the video that we didn't have time because it actually shows the whole lot of people that are not here today because it's Sunday. And it's very important that I owe everything I did to the whole team I had because it's very hard to make work on one's own. So please check the video to see everyone.
Do we have time, Philip, to put the video or not?
No, we're out of time, but we'll add it to the recording.
Okay, we will add it to the recording. Perfect.
Thank you.
Amazing.